The CH-47 dropped like a thunderhead onto the landing zone, rotors chopping the air into a roar. Dust exploded outward, swallowing the night in a tan storm. Through that storm, a slight figure appeared on the ramp. A woman no taller than 5'5", juggling a duffel and a long, awkward hard case that looked much too big for her frame. Master Sergeant Robert Hale crossed his arms, chin tilted, the way men do when they want the world to see who's in charge. "Our new specialist," he muttered, making air quotes no one asked for. "Brought a fishing rod, did she?" Weapons Tech Quentin Finch snorted from the shade. $10, says she's a general's kid. Never touched a real rifle. The helicopter lifted, wind slapping faces, and the dust thinned enough to show her eyes. Cool gray, unreadable. She adjusted her grip and stepped off the ramp without stumbling, though the hard case snagged on the lip and almost pitched her forward. No drama, no glare back, no apology. Just a steady breath, like she'd planned the wobble and accounted for it. "Specialist Sophia Reyes?" Robert didn't offer his hand. "Yes, Master Sergeant." Soft voice. Clear. No tremor. "Welcome to FOB Obsidian. You're late. Uniforms off, Reg, and whatever's in that coffin goes to the armory. Now." Sophia nodded once. Understood. Inside the ops building, Captain Emma Keller barely looked up from her tablet. Paperwork's thin, specialist. No prior posting listed. No specialty. "Want to fill me in?" "I was told command sent everything you needed, ma'am." Emma's eyes narrowed, then slid to Robert. "East Barracks. Solo quarters. A beat. And log that thing before someone trips." In the armory, Finch made a show of lifting the case. "What do you carry in here, bowling balls?" The latches clicked. He lifted the lid, and the sarcasm died on his tongue. A Barrett .50 lay cradled in custom foam, metal a soft ocean gray from meticulous oiling. "Oh, that's cute," Finch recovered, grinning. "They gave you the big kid's toy." He hefted it, hissing at the weight. "This thing's 30 pounds loaded. What are you, 60? You'll ride the recoil like a carnival ride, sweetheart." Sophia's face didn't shift. "Am I clear to sign?" He shoved the clipboard over. She signed, gathered her papers, and left without a word. That night in the mess hall, her boots made small, precise sounds on the concrete. Talk dimmed when she passed. A laugh here, a whisper there. Someone coughed a word that sounded like mascot. She ate alone, slow, neat, eyes quietly moving across the room like a sensor sweep. Lieutenant John Rhodes watched from across the aisle, curiosity creasing his brow. Something about her stillness felt intentional, not shy. A pause that held. Robert dropped a tray opposite him. "Taking bets yet?" John didn't look up, just watching. "Watch her ask for an M24 by morning," Robert said. "The Barrett will fold her in half." Morning briefing. The map glowed blue in the dim. Captain Emma pointed with a stylus. "Insertion at 0200. Alpha secures the compound. Bravo overwatch from Ridgeline Bravo 2. Sophia raised a hand. The room stilled. "Yes, specialist." Emma's voice carried a warning. "Western approach has better dead ground and a cleaner wind for long-range support." Sophia's tone wasn't argumentative. It was factual. Robert leaned toward Finch. "Meteorologist now." "We're sticking with the plan," Emma said. "Wheels up in 30. By afternoon, the range snapped with rifle cracks. Robert assigned Station 8, the worst crosswind wash on the line, to the new arrival. "Let's see it, Reyes." Sophia lay behind the Barrett, small adjustments, tiny breaths, a long, quiet study through glass. Then 5 shots, rhythmic, unhurried. At the board, a 3-inch group at 800 meters in the nastiest wind on the range. "Adequate," Robert said. "Adequate gets you killed." She nodded, stripped the Barrett with a surgeon's calm, and began cleaning. That night, John passed her open door. The rifle was in pieces across her bunk. Her hands traced parts like a pianist feeling ivory before a performance. No wasted motion, no flourish, only purpose. He moved on, unsettled by the discipline of it. At 0200, an unannounced bass drill shattered the dark. Sirens, running boots, barked orders. In 15 minutes, The opposing force wiped everyone but Sophia. She wasn't at her assigned bunker. She'd shifted to cover a blind approach from the dry riverbed. Unordered. Correct. You abandoned your post, Robert snapped afterward. The bunker was compromised from the start, she said. No edge, only certainty. Her hand ghosted to a thin scar at the base of her neck, then dropped. Not your call to make. A breath. Yes, Master Sergeant. That night, the mess hall hummed, spoons clinked, the coffee was bitter, and every conversation died when the colonel walked in, flanked by Sophia. Attention, Emma called. The colonel's gaze swept the room. Calm. Measuring. Mission parameters changed. Target relocated. Likely engagement is 3,000 meters from nearest insertion. Specialist Reyes will lead long range. Laughter cracked from Finch's corner. The girl with the cannon? She can barely carry. A voice from the doorway cut him off. Low weathered final. That's a Zulu badge. Chief Warrant Officer Michael Mercer stepped into the light. The room stilled. Michael's eyes held on the small, almost hidden insignia peeking from Sophia's collar. Slow steps. No hurry. Every shooter on base knew his name. 8 people alive were that, he said. It means a confirmed engagement beyond 3,000 meters. How far? John asked, barely breathing. Sophia met the silence. 3,241. In a sandstorm. One shot. The hum of the mess coolers filled the pause. Even air seemed to hold. If one quiet badge could flip a room, what would happen when the mountains tested her for Real? Dawn poured pale gold over the ridge. Rocks kept their secrets. Wind braided the valley with invisible ropes. Sophia lay prone, Barrett resting heavy, cheek welded to stock. Beside her, a man who had mocked her yesterday would be her spotter today. Robert checked his scope. Target building at 3100 meters. Wind 10 to 12 from northwest. Temp 62. Humidity 22. Barometric 24.79. Sophia listened to the air. Not the numbers, the conversation between heat and earth. She produced a pocket weather meter, took a reading, then opened a small, battered notebook. The pages were a forest of hand-drawn spirals, arrows, equations, and short notes like prayers. Valley wind's corkscrew, she murmured. Bullet will cross 3 wind regimes. Robert frowned. That's not in the tables. It wouldn't be. A flick of her pencil. Her father's voice ghosted in her ear. Wind moves like water, Mija. Read it like a river. How long have you done this? Robert asked, quieter now. Since I was 8, she said. My father was a physicist. Treated shooting like applied math. And the record? He asked. The badge. She didn't look up. Kandahar. Bomb maker. We'd hunted him for months. My team got hit. I was the only one who could still move. Sandstorm brewing. Command authorized the attempt. A breath, so tiny it could have been the wind. I didn't ask. Radio crackle. Overwatch, this is Eagle 6. Target convoy inbound. Copy, Robert answered. Through the scope, the world tunneled. Distance fell away. A black SUV rolled to a stop. Doors cracked. A figure stepped out, turning just enough to show a face. Sophia exhaled half a breath. Held. Thunder. The Barrett spoke, a deep, rolling report that thumped the chest and rode the ridge lines. The valley swallowed the sound, and then for heartbeats later. Hit confirmed, Robert said, voice soft with awe he hadn't meant to show. Clean. Sophia was already breaking the rifle down into traveling bones, motion measured, breath steady. The world expanding again from a single point back to wind and light and stone. Exfil in 10, Robert said, then paused. You could have shut us up on day 1. A demo. A show shot. I'm not here to perform, Sophia said. I'm here to make sure people come home. Back on base, the map room glowed again. Only this time, Sophia didn't take a back seat. Captain Emma pointed out mountain passes, caches, wind corridors. Sophia added quiet notes, precise, surgical. What ranges? Emma asked. 18 to 2,400 meters, Sophia said. That's your neighborhood, Finch said from the wall. No smirk, just acknowledgement. Later, in a bare office, Emma stood with her arms folded but her chin softened. "I owe you an apology." "Unnecessary." "It is," Emma said. "Leadership should have set the tone, even when files are blacked out." Sophia's fingers brushed the nicked scar at her neck. "Respect is earned. That part doesn't offend me." Emma's eyes flicked to the badge. 19 hours on glass. Alone. No support. Sophia gave the smallest nod. "You'll have what you need here," Emma said. "All of it." Outside, night cooled the concrete. Boots clicked, then faded. On the observation deck, the base lights tossed long, thin reflections on steel rail. John Rhodes found Sophia there, a rectangle of darkness around her as she held a rangefinder to the dark mountains. "Why not correct us?" he asked quietly. "Why take all the noise?" Sophia kept the glass to her eye. "The rifle isn't sentimental, John. It cares only about truth. Hit or miss." A soft pause. "Badges are metal. Shots are consequence." He leaned on the rail, beside her. "What was the target for 3241? Her." I left the glass. The wind lifted a loose strand of hair. "A man who killed 3 of mine. He thought distance was a shield." "And was it?" She looked back into the dark. Not for long. The mountains had granted one answer. But could Sophia teach a unit to hear the wind the way she did? And would they listen before the next storm? The range woke early, steel warming in the sun, targets glinting like coins scattered across scrub. Sophia chalked a diagram in the dirt for 5 operators, including John, and, surprisingly, Robert. Her voice stayed even, patient. "Standard formulas assume wind is a line. Mountains make it a braid. Think water." She traced loops, eddies, currents, layers. John's eyes sharpened. "So we're mapping 3D flow, not just speed and direction." "Exactly. We're predicting a path for a bullet through a moving river of air." Robert shook his head. "They didn't teach this in sniper school." "Most of this wasn't written down," Sophia said, almost a smile. "My father built it from fluid dynamics and weekends on a prairie range." We watched grass talk. Finch leaned in, genuinely curious. "And birds?" "Birds tell you when a thermal lifts." She pointed. "See how they hold there? Not flapping? That's a column of rising air. You cross it at 2/3 distance, adjust elevation a 1/10 mil, and write 3 clicks." They ran drills. Frustration evaporated into grin-tight victories as rounds smacked steel far beyond anyone's comfort zone. Not magic. Just rules the wind whispered if you knew its alphabet. From the berm, Michael Mercer watched with the colonel. His voice was a gravel scrape. "She's not just showing them calculations. She's reframing the problem." The colonel's reply was quiet. "Command wants her methods seeded across units. 6-week rotations. She leads." Sophia finished a correction and glanced up as the pair approached. Michael unlatched a hard case and passed it over. "For you." She opened it. A custom trigger group caught the light. Clean angles, promise in metal. "You shouldn't have." "I should," Michael said. "Latest from the labs. And before you ask, yes, it survives dust, cold, and the temper tantrums of master sergeants." Robert snorted. He'd earned the joke. Sophia's thumb floated the mechanism. "It'll break like a thought." Michael tilted his head. "Kandahar," he said, almost a question. Sophia's eyes cleared into distance. Not pride. Not even relief. Just empty. "The shot doesn't raise the dead. It just confirms the math." Michael nodded. "Sometimes the only thing left is you, the rifle, and the impossible. And then you make the impossible smaller." That night, the rec room hummed. Ice and glasses, a muted game on a corner TV no one watched. Conversation dulled when Sophia stepped in. Then Robert lifted his glass. "Reyes." Finch waved her over. "We're arguing atmospheric layering. Practical? Or just theory dressed up to look smart?" "Both." Sophia sat, patient. "It's theoretical most days. At extreme range in the right terrain, it's the difference between a story and a letter home." People leaned in, not to catch gossip, but to steal understanding. It felt like heat radiating toward knowledge. When the room emptied, Michael found her at the doorway. You know what they see. The technique, she said. They see someone who didn't flinch when the world called something impossible. His mouth twitched. Also, your notebook scares them. She smiled, small but real. Command wanted a school. But before a classroom, another mission waited. One that asked Sophia to identify a ghost before she could touch it. Pre-dawn, the helicopter skimmed black along blacker ridgelines. The team inserted 5 kilometers out and walked the rest, boots whispering over scree, lungs measuring the dark cold. By 0600 they lay on a high plateau. Sophia and John on glass, Robert in an offset overwatch, Sergeant Amara Warren on comms, Lieutenant Brennan orchestrating the chess. Perimeter sensors up, Warren said. Heartbeats only ours. Sophia built her position like a craftsman. Bipod bite, stock weld, bone stacked on bone. John logged air. Primary wind northwest 8 knots. Counter current mid-valley. Target elevation is 15 degrees below us. Thermal gradients big. Sophia wrote the world down and made parts of it obey. Barometric differentials. Humidity layers. A tiny Coriolis tweak for latitude. The math wasn't the point. It was a way to listen better. Hours slid by in a long, shared silence. The sun climbed. Heat simmered on rock. Sight picture wavered and settled, like breath. At 1347 Warren. Convoy inbound from the south. Confirmed, Robert said. Black SUV, 2 escorts. Perimeter establishing. Range 2815, John said, dialing. Mid-range thermal drift building. Suggest up 1/10 mil, right 3 clicks. Sophia's fingertips made the scope answer. Face confirmation required, Brennan reminded, voice even. No stress on the word required, but it hung in the air. Sophia flipped in a new optic module. The image jumped, not just magnified, but clarified. The DARPA glass shrugged at distance and heat haze, resolved edges the eye wanted to lie about. The SUV door opened. A man stepped out, half-turned, sun cutting a bright line under his cheekbone. Enhancing, John said, and the screen beside them ghosted through modes. Stand by running match. Seconds became tight as wires. The man moved toward the entrance, window collapsing. Match at 96%, Warren said. Green. Wind 3 meters per second right. Hold 0.1 up for thermal band, John said. His voice had settled into Sophia's rhythm, or hers into his. Sophia felt everything disappear, but a dot and a breath. The valley took the sound and kept it. 6 seconds later, dust jumped off the man's collarbone, and he folded like a line cut from a page. Direct, Robert said, neutral as doctrine, but his hand trembled once, briefly, on his data board. Target down. They broke the world back into parts and packed it into cases. John glanced sideways and caught it, a shift in Sophia's shoulders. Not pride, not emptiness either. What is it? He asked, quiet enough for the wind to keep. She latched a case. It felt like a team, she said. The words were small. They held the weight of a year. Then that's what we are, John said. He meant it. Extraction came on a curve of rotor thrum. Dust rose again. This time, when Sophia stepped off the ramp at base, nods met her. Small ones. Real ones. In debrief, Emma clicked through sat shots, timestamps, wind data. Collateral? 0. Attribution? Ambiguous. Outcome? Decisive. She looked at Sophia. Stand down for 48. As the room emptied, the colonel spoke in a low voice to Emma at the door. See the training. Emma nodded. Already asked. Later, Sophia cleaned the Barrett in slow, thankful motions. Oil's faint metallic scent lifted. She opened her footlocker and took out a photo. A girl with dark hair and a tall man in a battered ball cap, both squinting into sun on a prairie range. You were right, she whispered. It's not just about the math. Knock. John. 2 coffees. The team's in the rec room, he said. If you want to stop by. She considered. A long beat. I'll be there. Command had one more ask. Take what lives in a battered notebook and put it in other people's hands. Could the quietest shooter become the loudest teacher? They gave her a whiteboard, 3 battered wind meters, a stack of topo maps, and the kind of authority you can't fake. The classroom was the range, the sky, the ceiling, the valley, the lab. 6 weeks, Emma told her. Rotating groups. You design the course. You pick the candidates. Sophia didn't nod immediately. Teaching meant letting other people touch something she'd protected for years. She looked at Michael. He just smiled. Your father didn't write a book, he said. Maybe you will, in muscle memory. Day 1, she taught listening. Not equations. She put shooters on glass with no rifle, only a pencil and a field book. Map the wind, she said. With your eyes. With your skin. They learned to read how dust curled around a rock, how sun bled off a slope at noon, how a raven hangs and then slides sideways without flapping. How silence changes seconds before a gust arrives. Day 3, layers. She stacked see-through sheets, drew currents on each, then aligned them. Gasps. It clicked. You aren't aiming at a target, she said. You're sending a path through moving air that ends at a person making a decision you can't control. Between classes, she and John tuned the curriculum like a violin. Tighten here, soften there. Make space for curiosity. Robert ran field lanes with his old drill voice, but new patience. Finch, oddly, became the guy cracking jokes at the exact moment someone needed a breath. One afternoon, Emma intercepted Sophia outside the range house. You know what you've done? Lots of dirt diagrams. You change how they think. Sophia looked at the mountains, their honest, brutal lines. My father would have liked that. Did he ever serve? Emma asked. No, Sophia said. He just solved puzzles no one had language for yet. That night, John and Sophia stood on the observation deck, breath fogging the rail. Stars threw hard, cold light. You asked for the full Kandahar story, Sophia said. You still want it? I do. She didn't make it pretty. She talked about the IED, how sound becomes a wall, how sand gets in your teeth and under your skin and into your bones, how the radio went to static, how she drove a truck she didn't own to a ridge that didn't want her, how the wind kept changing its mind, how she made it choose. When it was over, she said, the silence pressed down. I thought a record would feel big. It felt small next to what we lost. John leaned his elbows on the rail. Maybe the shot wasn't the point. What was? That you refused to accept someone else's definition of impossible. That's the thing you're teaching. She was quiet for a long time. The wind whispered at their sleeves. The course filled. Shooters came skeptical, left altered. Not just better on paper, calmer in storm. The best left with notebooks that looked a little like hers. Penciled currents, tiny arrows, words like eddy and shear and hold. They left with a habit of pausing, of letting silence carry information. Week 2, Sophia walked onto the range to find a small crowd around a paper target riddled with close-spaced impacts at 2,000 meters. Laughter. High fives. Robert wiped at his eye and pretended it was dust. Michael approached with a sealed envelope. Command wants you on a consult, he said. Remote terrain. Similar problem set. They'll take your team if you want them. Sophia weighed the letter in her hand. I do. She found Emma. We'll go after rotation 3, she said. They'll be ready. Emma nodded. Take what you need. Before lights out, Sophia stood alone at the far edge of the motor pool. Equipment barked in the distance. A dog trotted by, sniffed, moved on. She thought of her father in that photo. His grin, the way he never praised, only asked better questions. She smiled up into the star rip of night. Back in the rec room, John had spilled topo maps across a table. New area, he said, tapping ridges with a pen. Look at this bowl. Thermal escalator by mid-morning. Good, she said. Let's make it smaller. He glanced up. The impossible? She nodded. He grinned. Always. The base didn't erupt in a cheer the day Sophia's first class graduated. That's not how places like FOB Obsidian measure things. Instead, a dozen small changes radiated. A door held open without theatrics. A seat saved in a briefing. A question asked with respect. A name used without a smirk. The mountains noticed the difference, even if no one else did. On the final night before the consult, Sophia placed the battered photo back in her footlocker. "We're not done, Dad," she said softly. "But we're getting closer to the language." She closed the lid and turned to leave. At the door, she paused, listening. Not for footsteps. For wind. It whispered along the corridor and out into the desert. It sounded like a river. "Hook, you've walked with Sophia this far, into dust and math and the quiet courage of doing a job without applause. So here's the question only you can answer. Have you ever known someone whose calm skill was misread as weakness until the moment it mattered? What did they do, and how did it change the room? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to read it.